Hi, welcome. Can you hear me? Please put your thumbs up if you can hear me. I'm using a new setup here, and I'm quite surprised that the earnings are already out. So just let me quickly know. Meanwhile, I can take it from here. All right, good. You can hear me. That's awesome. Right, so welcome to a quick live reaction from my side about NIO Q4 2020 earnings. I haven't had the time to read through it yet. I just basically skimmed it. So I know already that the revenues are higher than what I personally anticipated, but let's just go through it together. I know already like that the stock price seems to be tanking a little bit, -4%. I wouldn't worry about this for now, but let's look at the facts, all right? So, okay, let's get into this. Vehicle sales, 496 million. So that's actually, I estimated 933 million. I was a little bit on the conservative side, but it's still nice from my perspective to see that the vehicle sales were up. So that means that they actually have a higher average sales price than I was calculating from last quarter, Q3. So that's hopefully good. And I'm really happy about the next point, which is the vehicle margin. A nice improve to 17%. This is awesome. I was only calculating with an increase to 15.8%. So that's really good in my point of view. I was actually, I saw some analysts out there were saying like, well, possibly margins are going to fall. But then, you know, if you saw my video today earlier, I once again did a deep dive into BAS and yeah, how it's calculated and so on. And in the end, I was quite happy or quite confident actually that they would actually increase the vehicle margin, and 17.2% is really good in my books. The ET7, which will come out in the beginning of 2021, will even have a higher vehicle sales margin in my point of view. So it should be going up from here with higher scale and also new vehicles like the ET7 coming out. So that's quite good. What else? Total revenues, yeah, more than 1 billion. That's awesome. And that's more than what I actually also anticipated. Once again, that's good. Let's see what we can see about sorry, the other sales. I'm looking for the other sales. As mentioned, I'm basically seeing this for the first time. 70s, this is awesome. 71.6 million in other sales. This is really cool because that's even more than I was anticipating in a bullish scenario. I thought like maybe they can go up to 65 million, but that's a huge increase. And this was like my intention of, I think e-commerce finally taken off. Maybe some people are running out of the free battery swapping, so they actually have to now starting to pay for each of the swaps or for the monthly plans which they have. So that's definitely good for the other sales. Also with the increased vehicles that they are selling, that means more home chargers are being sold as well. So this is really good in my views. Anything about the credits? Okay. So they attribute the increase in the other sales mainly to the credits as well. So I think other sales, yeah, I had, including the carbon credits, I had them at 64 million roughly. So that's a nice one. Let's scroll up again. What else can we get here? The gross profit, at 175 million. Let's see, I was at 147 million. So once again, better than I was expecting here. Loss from operations, they must be worse than I thought, because I already saw that the net loss was at 212 million, and that's much more than I was expecting. So loss of operations. Minus 102. So, okay, let me see how what they have for R&D expenses, research and development, 127 million. Okay, so that's an increase. Okay, just bear with me as I'm reading it for the first time here, actually. Okay, so they have new increases for research and development. That makes sense compared to the third quarter. Actually, I think in 2021, that will be not in our favors, to be honest. They will ramp also the R&D, and I think particularly in the area of autonomous driving, where we should expect actually a higher cost in the future. So that will, in the future, drive the R&D expenses. And for the SG&A, let's see, 185 million compared to I had 150 million. So yeah, that's unfortunately still kind of the Achilles heel of NIO here, with the NIO houses, the battery swapping, and all of the new sales stores that they are building, definitely costing them a lot here to expand. But all in all, I don't see why the stock price is tanking so much right now. Just with this first look, margins are up, which is big in my point of view. This is really good. And the net loss, okay, is definitely more than estimated by Wall Street, because this looks like that the EPS is also, yeah, not as favorable as the analysts were actually anticipating. So I would say, let me watch the stock price again, minus 4%. Well, let them have their sell-off. I'm not worried about that, because I think in the current stage for NIO, for us, what is most important are the revenue increases. So it's actually quite bullish in my views here that they can post more than $1 billion US dollars. And also they could easily have a miss on the margins in terms of not improving as much as they are improving right now, actually. So I think that's a good one from an investor perspective, maybe not from Wall Street perspective for now. Cash equivalents, 6.5 billion. So yeah, that's strong. NIO has certainly no cash problems right now. Let's see what else we can find in this report. Not gonna read through all of the details here, trying to pick the main ones. Completion of the offering, yeah, they bought back most of NIO China. Let's see the CEO and CFO comments. Transformational year, the strong momentum has continued. Okay, that's just the usual talk. Talking about NIO Day. Right, that's nothing new. Solid performance in 2020. Steadily increase. Okay, so these are more just broader comments this time. Looking ahead, underpinned by our continuous technology innovation, strengthening financial performance, and unswavering determination of achieving the best user experience, we are confident about the company's long-term competitiveness. Okay. Yeah, all in all. Usually in the last CEO and the CFO comments, there were some interesting signals forward-looking, but this time this more looks like a normal wrap-up here, and nothing special to find in here. Yeah, some of the commenters here say that the loss is attributed to the dollar RMB conversion. Not sure, I haven't checked that one yet. Let me see the outlook, business outlook. That's important. For the first quarter, expecting deliveries to be between 20,000 and 20,500 vehicles. Wow, that's strong. That's really strong. If you remember, I did one video about when NIO should finally turn profitable. And I was super conservative in that one and said, well, NIO is possibly going to post a first profit in company history just for the quarter in the fourth quarter of 2021. And back then I said, well, Q1, let's be cautious about that one. Cyclical industry, we don't know what's going to happen with Chinese New Year and so on. And pretty likely Q1 will really suck. But that one would be an increase actually for the guideline here also on the revenues compared to Q4 2020. And this, I can tell you, is something really, really rare. Even Tesla, when they were ramping the Model 3, they didn't have a Q4 to Q1 quarter-on-quarter ramp in which they are increasing the revenues or deliveries and so on. So this is actually, seems like they have a really full order book, production's running well, and quite confident here about Q1. In my books, this is a really strong guidance. So once again, not understanding why this is a miss in Wall Street's view here. Possibly, once again, it's just the EPS, which, yeah, is of course not as good as the Wall Street consensus here. But in my point of view, the most important metrics here, such as the revenue, such as the margins, and the outlook are really, really good. Very solid earnings report here, in my views. So let's not pay too much attention about the after hours. And I think maybe even though the pre-market tomorrow is not what counts will be maybe 3 days out of today, how the stock will finally react to it. Also, we haven't had the earnings call yet. I think, but I couldn't read through all of the text right now. This is still, still live and trying to understand all of it from the earnings and getting as much out of the report as I can. But so far, it looks like there isn't any specifics from CFO or CEO regarding any outlook like the factory or ET7 pre-orders, something like that. I haven't seen it in the report. Correct me if I'm wrong here, if I have missed it. But we can certainly expect that either they're gonna do either they're gonna say something on the call, or the analysts are going to ask about it, I'm pretty sure. Right, let's look at some of the comments here. Europe announcement is awesome. Miguel, what are you referring to? Is here something in the report that I missed? No, there isn't something about Europe in here. Possibly referring to the general news out there, right? The increase in the net loss over the third quarter of 2020 was primarily attributed to the unrealized foreign exchange losses derived from the depreciation of the US dollar cash balance. Okay. Thanks, Mr. Schnell. The increase in net loss. This is actually, yep, okay. Now I got it as well. That's the comment regarding the earnings per share. So it is indeed the US dollar to RMB conversion that is kind of causing here also the net loss to be, yeah, greater. I was outlining this in my video earlier today, but I wasn't sure, like, this is still a black box, like whether or not they are doing something like hedging currency risks or something like that, or how they're actually going to convert it in a report. But it seems like it does have some impact here on the net losses. But so far, I do think what we want to see here is the growth of the revenues. And also now with this guidance, we're now already so far into Q1 that they're pretty damn sure also gonna be very close to what they're guiding here. So that's since the CFO has actually changed for NIO, they have really been very solid on the guidance and also then on the deliveries later on. Okay, February deliveries. I haven't caught that one. Let me check. Awesome. Thank you guys for helping me out here. That's really cool. So deliveries in February are, let me check, 5,578 vehicles. Okay, so that's down month on month, which was to be expected because of the Chinese New Year. In the Dongxi network, we had some talks about expectations, what everyone thinks, what will be the deliveries. Most of you guys said it's going to be more than 7,000. So you've been really bullish. Well, it's not loading right now. Sorry about that. But 5,600 vehicles, more or less. Well, it's not super strong, but if you are now taking into account that they say that the guidance for Q1 will be that strong, that means that they are gonna have a really strong March, and they know it. So we shouldn't care too much about February. What maybe from a CEO perspective, we should rather care about that the employees actually get to do their holidays, so they will be happy about that. And with the Q1 guidance, I think that's still really good. So nothing to worry about the February sales here, in my point of view. Yeah, here's one comment or question from Felipe. How's the NIO down after the results? The results seem to be positive. Well, I can agree to that. I just went through it, and basically, in my point of view, these are positive results as well. And I wouldn't take too much care about what Wall Street thinks about it right now. Possibly they're just reacting based on the EPS, maybe some algorithms shifting around. Who knows? That doesn't matter too much in my point of view, because the EPS definitely seemed to be worse than anticipated by Wall Street. But I mean, the report overall is really positive in my views as well. Exactly. After hours doesn't mean so much. Also, there are less shares trading. So for us, that's nothing to worry about. If I would have started to worry if, for instance, the margins were not improving, for instance, if they had a weak guidance, a much weaker guidance that I was already anticipating for Q1, but none of these points actually came true, right? They have really strong metrics here where it really counts. Exactly. After hours is a circus. One question here is, what is EPS? Sorry, EPS is earnings per share. So the net earnings and then divided by the share count. So what does it mean for the share price in an outlook? In my point of view, once again, this should, usually it takes maybe 1 to 3 days in order to find a new balance in my experience. So there might be a sell-off based just on the EPS miss here, as we are seeing in the after hours, and that may continue tomorrow. That's possible, but the fundamentals here are really positive. So I would expect that buyers come in and want to pick up some shares of these companies here, because this is really very solid, much more solid actually than Tesla in the early years. And I have been invested in Tesla during that time. So to me, this is actually quite risk-free now with $6.5 billion in cash, with this sort of order flow and production and not profits, but the margins. So I think with those margins, NIO really can break even with higher sales towards the end of this year. And that's the point when you want to be invested in the stock, because then Wall Street definitely is going to react to it. So sounds good to me. You said that it's a conservative view that NIO is making profits in Q4. I mentioned that I have been quite conservative for the 2021 projections that I've made. So I only calculated with 85,000 deliveries for NIO in 2021. And that, to be honest, I think they will smash that. I think they will be much higher. But based on that and based on my business case assumptions, I could already calculate that this would land them a profit in the last quarter. The last quarter, Q4, is usually always the best quarter in automotive industry. So that's when I also expect that NIO will make the most sales in that year. So that might be, well, now it comes all down to cost, right? The SG&A and the R&D, this, if that one cannot really be reduced or kept low as it is actually in Q3, then it might be hard to break even in Q4 2021 as well. But I think they have a chance for it because it's actually in NIO's hands. With the recent Q3 earnings call, I think Li Bin, he also mentioned that they now try to invest much more into autonomy. So that will cost them a lot for building up the team, maybe going even into something like building their own chips for the future, stuff like that. This will cost lots of money, and that's what they said in a cash raise where they're going to spend the money. So I think in Q2 and Q3, we will certainly see this reflected in higher cost. So definitely not going to post a profit in those quarters, in my point of view. And then they also need more money, for instance, before the ET7 will be released for the final testing and stuff like that. This is always where it costs the automotive OEMs lots of money before they release a new car. But then in the Q4, if they're smart enough, if they're smart about it, they could actually manage to keep this cost down and post a first profit. So that's my point of view, how it's gonna go. Yeah, I love this question. Should NIO hedge with Bitcoin BTC on a balance sheet? I made actually a video about it and said that this is a unique advantage for Tesla now that they have BTC on a balance sheet, because I think for NIO, well, technically they possibly could, but I think it's not gonna happen just because of the fact that it's a Chinese company and Bitcoin is banned in China. So even though they have like a US listed company and they could technically take on Bitcoin there, but I think in the end that's not going to happen. And this, if Bitcoin goes up, then Tesla, for instance, can also improve their balance sheet with that, right? So they don't have to dilute their shareholders, and I think lots of Chinese companies won't be able to do that. So technically, that might be an advantage for them. But on the other hand, NIO has lots of competitive advantages in China compared to Western companies. So it's also an unfair playing field. Chinese companies are always in a better position in China, obviously. What about the correction? Yeah, good question. So I've been calling this run into earnings that we've seen actually finally today, since all through the last week, because maybe I wanted it to happen, to be honest. But yeah, I think the markets and NIO were just driven overall by some algorithms. So I didn't see much differentiation between different stocks. And so NIO was just dragged along with it. But today, actually, the stock movement, in my point of view, was looking quite good for NIO in terms of that we broke out of a downward trend line. And for the markets, it's still kind of difficult to call it right now, because last week it was actually a bull trap. So I also expected that we would bounce further and go back into this trend channel, which should be positive. But that wasn't the case, and we went back to the support levels. Let me just look at my trading view here for a second. Let me open the chart for you guys. So I do think there is a chance that we go higher from here in the overall markets. All right, here we go. Please ignore my style of drawing some random lines in here. I'm not a technical analyst, but it certainly helps me. So we found back in this overall upward trend channel here, in my point of view. But last week here, we had a bull trap. So we went back down all the way to the support level. We closed there by Friday. You know how this felt. And now we made it all the way back here. But now this move needs to be sustained. And if it's sustained, then we could keep on trading in here. Otherwise, we may go back to these levels. And I think NIO is just, yeah, pretty much driven by this overall movement right now. Let me check. Yeah, for NIO technically wouldn't look so good right now. Anyways, that's just some trading stuff besides the technical analysis. What do I expect from conference call? Thanks for the question. I think I want to see more about, or hear more about, what Li Bin has to say about their approach to autonomy, because that was a pretty big pitch for the ET7 actually on NIO Day. So with all the specs, and I think they have a really good team behind it, and they're not really talking about it yet. So I want to know more about their approach, how they're going to use, for instance, data, how LiDAR is going to help them in their views, what are their plans about implementing also V2X and stuff like that, which is big in China and also launched by Baidu, for instance. So that would be one point. And I'm not expecting them to talk about Europe or US expansion, actually. I expect that the analysts are going to talk and ask them about them. But I think they will remain silent on it, because I think they want to really plan and not get disturbed by it. They know how hard it is to go overseas, especially as a Chinese company. And it would be really dumb. They have only something to lose if they go out now and say, well, in September, we're going to sell in Norway. What do they have to win with that? So I think they're probably going to stay silent on this one. And, well, I would also want to hear about the Hefei agreement that they just signed once again with the local government about building this industrial park. I think if I'm reading it right, it seems like this is big support from the local government for NIO, not only for the supplier base, but actually also for building this factory, because there is a factory being built there. And now I want to know who is paying for it and who can use it. Is it only NIO? Is it also other car companies? Is it JAC NIO? Who's going to pay for it? That might be something that they could actually disclose in the earnings call. They don't have to put this in this earnings report right now, because that has nothing to do with the earnings. But they could announce it or speak about it in the earnings call, because I mean, they already did the signing ceremony, and as I've shown in my video, they already shown also the videos in the local news about that there is actually something built, and they have been managing people on the factory side that actually talked about even the capacity of this factory and so on. So it's not a secret anymore in some point of views, but of course now if they talk about it, it needs to have some legal ground, because they're a publicly listed company, right? They cannot just go out and talk about like this. If it's material, if it can affect the stock price, they need to be more cautious about it. But an earning call, I think, could certainly serve for such kind of announcements. So maybe that's something to look at. Hey, Amir, thanks for tuning in. Regarding the net loss, yeah, that one has increased. And luckily, some of the viewers pointed out that this was seems to be also not only, but partly due to the RMB US dollars conversion and exchange rate issues there. So I was talking about this in my preview earlier this morning, and it seems like indeed it has affected them. So, and the net loss, the increased net loss, is possibly one of the reasons why in the after hours the stock price not reacting positive to it. Right, new question about dilution. Thanks, Johnny, for the question. I don't see more dilution coming. They have now 6.5 billion US dollars, which they first need to spend. Too much cash on hands is also not good. They use some of the money to buy back shares from NIO China, which is good. Now they first need actually to tell people what they're gonna do with all of the money. So we still have only small insights on what they're gonna do with it, besides spending it on autonomy and sales, building new stores and stuff like that. So yeah, what do I think about the business outlook for Q1? In my views, it's really strong, to be honest. We now have already the February sales, which are not that strong, but March sales are looking really good. And as I have gotten to know NIO right now, they won't put out such a bullish guidance if they weren't aware now that they're gonna do that. I'm pretty sure about it. So it's really good bullish outlook here for Q1. Okay, is 100 US dollars by the end of the year possible? I think that really depends a lot on the overall markets, as we've witnessed last week. Right now, it is really the question how tech companies are valued. So we have a big correction now, not only in NIO, but also in other tech stocks. And obviously, NIO is valued as a tech company. It's not valued like a normal car manufacturer. So if we get back into a more bullishness in the overall markets, I would certainly expect that it is possible by the end of the year, especially if NIO actually posts a profit in Q4. That could be the catalyst for it. But even if not, there are many other aspects. I think if they show like improvements, for instance, how they're going to approach autonomy, how they have new subscription models, how they improve the other sales, if those metrics are going to improve in the next quarters within this year, I think that could lead to a revaluation of the company. And also I've already shared with my patrons that I'm currently working on this revaluation of the company. You know, my last business case was only the price target of 40 US dollars, and that was only based on actually the car sales. And way before NIO also announced what they announced on NIO Day, and also everything else that happened in between. So there's so much more catch up to do to reevaluate this company. And I've been doing that work in the background. And to give you just a sneak peek, I think NIO could really grow to 3-digit billion revenues till 2030. So that's a big number to say, but I think it's possible from what I'm seeing, how I'm modeling the revenues there. And that would certainly also reflect in the share price. So currently, like I look at some of the analysts out there, like Deutsche Bank and so on, they value NIO by the 2023 numbers. So what kind of revenue is NIO expected to do in 2023? And then they put a multiple on it, let's say like 11 times sales. But I'm looking out much further, like 2025, 2030. So the really long way. Where could NIO go? What potential has this company? Because not every company actually has this kind of potential that NIO has. Some companies are just plain car manufacturers, right? But in NIO, there are so many more business opportunities on top of just the car business. And they're much more advanced also when it comes to software and many other revenue streams that can be unlocked in the future. So there's not many companies where you can actually find such kind of revenue growth opportunities, in my point of view. This is not investment advice as always. It's just how I think about this company. But ultimately, this is why I invested in it. And also, this is why until today, I haven't sold a single share of NIO after the run up from $3 to where we are today. And so, of course, this is still a correction right now, and it feels not good to be in a 20 to 30% correction, even in NIO. And of course, there are many question marks, and especially in Q1 when sales are usually weak, the bears are coming out and say, well, where's the growth? There's no growth anymore. And now we also have the revaluation of the tech stocks. So, when this happens, this also means that NIO is under lots of pressure, of course. That's a very solid point. All companies are going all electric. Yes, because they have to. That's exactly right. And that's interesting. In my point of view, it's actually currently from the German OEMs. I would say it's Volkswagen doing the best job. And it's also a pity because they took Audi off the stock markets. I'm possibly going to make a video about this as well. But in my point of view, that wasn't a smart decision. Audi would have tremendously benefited if they were still listed as a company, because Audi is putting out lots of electric car models. They don't have maybe the EV blood. They're coming from a different field, but they're doing a good job right now, in my point of view, to switching to EVs. Question about XPeng. Well, I have to say I have no XPeng position, still not. I have done a couple of videos even after the IPO, and I think XPeng is doing well in their terms, and they are scaling fast. There certainly is a market for it. I see videos about their capabilities in terms of autonomous driving. It seems to be really good software, but I just don't see the same potential as with NIO in terms of the revenue potentials that they can unlock. And also, I think that they have a problem with the positioning in the market because they have low margins. They're trying to compete with Tesla in the same customer segment, and I think that's not going to work. I think Tesla is going to take the bulk of the sales there. So their differentiation here for XPeng is possibly the autonomy, and maybe they're doing a good job there in China in the future. So that could certainly lift the share price. So I'm not arguing that. I think it might be a good investment in the future if you're looking for returns, but I just don't see the same way that they could do like NIO has. Yeah, not everyone likes the style of Tesla. That's true. So we need competition. We need actually more people or more companies selling electric cars. That's correct. And to be honest, I think the legacy OEMs, the so-called legacy OEMs, they will be also successfully switching to EVs. The question is how fast. and how much of the cake they can still get in the end. Let's see, what other questions we've got? When do I think that NIO will go into the European and the US markets? I'm certain that NIO will go into the European markets this year. I made a video about this before. About the US markets, I'm not so sure, although we have recent speculations that NIO already is preparing that. I think NIO will have a harder time in the USA, to be honest. So it's a smart decision to go to Norway first, the Scandinavian countries, and so on. I think they have a good fit with the target audience there. And then the big question is still, how are they going to scale that? Will they bring battery swapping? Yes or no? It's looking more likely because after NIO Day, they now have the automatic swapping and higher capacity for the swapping and so on. So that may work without stuffing, also in European countries where labor cost is more expensive. So definitely possible. Why not? How confident are you with NIO? Yeah, I'm very confident with NIO, of course, because it's my largest holding in my portfolio. If I weren't confident, then I would have taken the profits already and I would have sold. I know that NIO is a very risky stock, so don't put all of your eggs into one basket. Just because I am doing it that way, that doesn't mean that you should do the same. So this is, as always, not financial advice, and NIO is quite volatile, as we've seen since the last couple of weeks. So if you cannot stomach that, if you need a more safer return, or if you cannot cope with, for instance, the stress between the US and China relations, then you certainly should keep it as a small position. But for me, as I'm understanding the company really well, and also the sector, and because I understand where NIO is going in the future, I can align a bigger part of my portfolio to it and be quite comfortable with that. So yeah, I'm confident that in the long run, even if there's a dip right now, I would unlikely sell it unless I see a fundamental change in the company. And once again, coming back to today's earnings, I think they're really solid, fundamentally good, and nothing to worry about. That should be my main message here. What do you think about an Intel Mobileye partnership and the chip of the ET7 being a Nvidia chip? Would an independent from an American company solution be better for NIO? Yeah, it's interesting for NIO's autonomy strategy. They seem to have like kind of different things working at the same time. I think the Mobileye connection is still strong and on. I think they are launching a how to say, not a prototype, a first project in Israel, where they're now delivering the cars. And I think it's a different partnership. So NIO will have the Mobileye chips, for instance, the cameras and so on, and also based on the autonomy platform by Mobileye. And ultimately, I think the goal should be that NIO is actually selling the cars for Mobileye. So Mobileye, at some point, if they're able, can actually operate their own robo-taxi fleet. So for the ET7 with the Nvidia chipset, that one is different because that's NIO's self-developed platform in a way, but making use of those third-party providers. And that, once again, is different from Tesla's fully vertically integrated strategy with even having the chipset in-house and basically everything in-house that you can have in-house. So for me, currently this Nvidia partnership is the most interesting one, because I would like to know more. Currently it's all rumors and speculation also from my side how NIO is approaching this problem, and I think that they are kind of on a way of doing something similar that Tesla is doing. So obviously they don't have the data, as much data as Tesla, but I think they should be actually doing a quite good job for developing their own solution. I think with Ren Shaoxing, the AI researcher, they have a really strong technical background person leading the team there. So I think we could actually be surprised by what will be coming out of that. If you listen to Li Bin, what he says about it, it's interesting to hear that he's usually talking also, once again, more about the user experience. So he's not like Elon Musk going out there and saying, like, we will have Tesla cars in the streets everywhere, will be taxis, fully autonomous and so on. That's not what Li Bin says about NIO. What he says is NIO will have the best user experience towards autonomy. And I think this is also where LiDAR is coming in, because just from a Chinese cultural perspective, I think this is really about providing safety and some kind of accuracy, which may be over the top, because actually I won't argue with Elon Musk that LiDAR is possibly not necessary in order to solve full self-driving. But the NIO way might be a bit different. And they're now kind of leapfrogging now, because they're now introducing a new camera suite, the most powerful chipset, which may not be as energy efficient as the Tesla one, for instance, but has more computing power and so on. So it will really be interesting to see how this can actually compare. And that's, once again, what I hope to hear from Li Bin, maybe a little bit more elaboration on that during the earnings call. Does anything worry me about NIO? Yeah, I mean, like, I've been following this company when they canceled earnings calls. So days like today, they send out well, I don't remember even if they sent out the earnings report, but in the end, there was no earnings call, right? And the stock tanked 25%. So that worried me. Now, looking into the future, what worries me about NIO? I think it would be nice if they would improve on the energy consumption of the cars. It's not as energy efficient as a Tesla, for sure. So Tesla is the leading tech player in the field. No one can beat them. And I would love to see NIO catch up more in this regard. So for instance, having the platform redeveloped once again, even though NIO has their own EV dedicated platform, but stuff like that in where Tesla has the front, NIO still has lots of cables and stuff in the front. So that sounds more like, to me, like not a super ideal solution so far for designing an electric car. So I think from the engineering perspective, there is something else that can be done. But maybe this is actually not as much on focus for NIO than it is for Tesla, because NIO is trying to strive for the service and the user experience. So that's why they introduced, for instance, also the battery swapping, why they have the app functionalities, and why they built this community and so on. So they may have different focus points. Also, they should go more into e-commerce, NIO lifestyle and stuff like that. So you can't do everything 100%. So maybe the 85% perfect car from an EV perspective is sufficient for NIO, but I would actually love them to improve on that. So if I don't see any improvements there and competitors are catching up, so for instance, once Mercedes or BMW or Audi come out with cars that are more energy efficient, higher acceleration, and so on, then I would start to worry about NIO about their competitiveness in the end, because obviously they need to keep on selling cars, and that's what's ultimately enabling it. When would I consider to sell NIO? Good point. Yeah, as always, I would sell any moment if something fundamental changes in what I see today in NIO. So for instance, if they say they're not gonna do the e-commerce business anymore, and that was just something and I scratched it, so that would really erase a lot of the revenue potential for the future, and thereby also decrease my valuation prospects for NIO, and possibly I would consider taking some profits there. Also, if there's anything like fraud involved or anything where we can see that NIO has cheated or something like that, that would cause me to sell as well. But so far, I don't see any signs and hints for that. But talking about Chinese stocks, you always get these questions. You always have it. I have also been invested in Luckin Coffee before, despite knowing about the short seller reports. That was kind of a gamble for me, a trade. But this reflects also a lot to Chinese stocks and in general. And we hear stories, for instance, about Axpong, that they are selling to third parties maybe in order to bump the sales. So there is maybe ways how you can trick the markets in a way. But in the vehicle sales in general, you have to think that license plates are registered and they are official. So official databases for that, reporting about the license plate registries and so on. So it's quite hard to actually fake sales in the long run. And so thereby, I would see the chances for that quite low. And so thereby, I don't think that's something to worry about, to be honest, for NIO. But definitely, I mean, as soon as some red flag like this appears, that would be something to reconsider. But then ultimately, maybe asking the other way around, when does it finally reach the ultimate valuation? Well, I'm still in the progress of finding that out, to be honest, updating my hypothesis about where this stock can go, how much revenues they can make in the future. And I just have the feeling that we haven't reached the end yet. So there's no reason for me to consider selling right now. And yeah, I mean, I put out a video about the Baillie Giffords price target. Those guys are pretty smart, and I can follow all of the arguments which they have outlined in this prospect and report. So why consider selling before that right now would be my question back to you. Oh, somebody else who bought at $3. Congratulations. Are you in love with NIO? That's a nice question. Thanks. I can say that it's kind of, there is definitely some emotional connectedness to the brand, because I mean, it's just so well done with Nomi, and the brand in general really resonates. I think that's also one of the competitive advantages. It really resonates with also Western customers. And so I can say that, yeah, I like the design of the cars. I like lots of the user experience that I see with NIO. And I know investments shouldn't be emotional, but I mean, if you start understanding a company so deeply as I understand NIO right now, there's definitely more than just looking at the plain numbers. The same for Tesla. I mean, I invest in Tesla not only because of Tesla, but also because of what Elon Musk is doing, how visionary he is, how he's changing the world, the greater good, the vision of the company. And frankly, NIO has also a really strong vision about blue sky coming and so on. So that's really good. Will you buy NIO when it's available in Germany? I don't know. I'm actually planning to I would love to get a Tesla from Giga Berlin once it's finally up and running. It seems like the Germans are ultimately slow again in building the factory. I hope it can actually be finished quite soon. And I would love to get a Tesla that is made in Germany. That would be cool. I'm not sure if I need a car right now. Personally, I'm not owning a car here in Berlin right now because we have car sharing, we have public transport, which is really good and so on. But in the end, my decision would definitely be between a Tesla or NIO, or maybe buy both. So if I'd get a NIO, I'd possibly go for the ET7. Yeah, Germany will only build a Model Y, at least in the beginning. Nice one. That's a really cool comment. The deliveries are higher than in January because calculated by the days, that's resulting on a higher rate here for the cars. Really awesome pick here. Have you worked for an investment company? No, I haven't. Actually, I'm a self-taught investor, and my background is that I actually worked for a consulting company in the beginning where I learned to make business cases because we started our own startups and ventures. So basically, we came up with a new business idea and I made the business case for it, like where will be the revenue, how much money does the company need, and so on. And we made this as clients for our clients, and some of them have been actually automotive companies like Audi, like Volkswagen, and so on. So that's why I also know the automotive space quite deeply. And because I learned how companies work, what are the key KPIs, how to structure the business case, the balance sheet, and so on, that's helping me analyzing the companies which are listed publicly. And I think I'm better at investing actually in startups, and NIO is kind of a startup that just happens to be publicly listed. So what many other investors don't see in the company because it's maybe too early, I have actually an easy time in looking beyond that and start thinking about where will this company be. And that's really helping me in finding those picks early. So I got in early in NIO, early in Tesla, early now I would say also in SEP, Huami, Futu, and Tiger. You guys know about this. Luckily also early in Bitcoin in November. Still late kind of, but still early in a way for Bitcoin. And so, yeah, that's working quite well so far. But obviously, it also really depends on the markets, because if now in circumstances like that the markets are all going down, then obviously it's also hard to stay up there. But last year, my portfolio made a 10x, which is quite hard to achieve. And I can be lucky about that. Okay, maybe one of the comments, should NIO be a keeper for someone averaging at $60 a share, or cut a loss and move on? Okay, once again, this is not financial advice here on this channel because I don't know your personal financial situation, and I'm also no CFA. I'm not a financial advisor, so I cannot give you an answer to that really. But what I can say is what I'm doing with NIO, and I'm currently not selling, so I don't think it's a sell at the current price. And what I can also tell you is that you need to understand the company that you're investing in, and you need to have a picture in it, like where could this company go in the future? How likely is it? How much of my personal money that I could lose do I want to put in there? So, and now if you invested kind of late or at $60 at a high point, then you need to think about, like, how convinced are you about it? Do you want to hold it for a while and see where it goes, or do you need the money? Do you have more funds? Do you have dry cash, dry powder to average down? I did lots of averaging down. I've been in at NIO $5 to $6 in the very beginning, and it went all down to $1.9. And I So I was down minus 60% at some points on my NIO investment in the very beginning, and I kept on buying more. But I also at some point had struggles doing that because it was really troublesome times back then. NIO was almost bankrupt. We didn't know what's going to happen. So it took lots of conviction to do that. So my suggestion would be, what you need now is actually conviction in the company, and you can only have conviction if you understand it. And so you need to learn about it, or you pick another company where you understand the industry, where you have love and passion for the company, and then build conviction about it and learn to invest. So that's as much as I can tell it. I cannot tell you whether or not you should buy or hold here. Exactly, Johnny, there's some early comments. You must be around since I just started the channel. And you're right, I sold NIO at one point. That was in the beginning of 2020, actually. So we had a spike after the Q4 earnings in December of 2019. And I sold the spike because I was just turning green on NIO. And then I bought back in later. So that was something which I usually don't suggest doing, trying to time the markets. But I sold actually because at that point in time, I lost the conviction for a short term of period because NIO was just struggling with securing new financing. They kept on doing convertible bond after convertible bond. And with each of the earnings call, there was no clear answer whether or not they can secure new financing. So at some point, it was getting way too hot for me, and I sold. So yeah, but I came back in and just right in time. Okay, I think I'm going to wrap it up here. We're maybe 1 hour left until the earnings call. I think I'm going to do a separate video on the earnings call and my key takeaways from that. Give you my views on that tomorrow, possibly, or whenever I find the time. But for now, once again, let me repeat about these fourth quarter financials, which are, in my view, really good. They beat my personal expectations on revenue, beat my expectations on the margins for the vehicle, and also for the gross margin. The net loss was higher than I personally expected it, but seems like large part of this increase in the net loss was actually coming from currency issues, which I kind of anticipated in a way, maybe in a wrong way before, but I can live with this explanation. So I can understand why this is causing the share price to tank, because that's a miss in the earnings per share. So that is kind of not good in the eyes of Wall Street. But from a long-term investor view, I think this is a very positive earning report, very solid fundamentals, all intact, a very good guidance for the Q1. So I think we should be happy about it. I'm certainly happy about it. There's lots to come in 2020 and 2021, so it's not getting boring. It's certainly not stopping here. And now I think the most important insights will actually come from the earnings call, because the CEO and CFO comments didn't have too much new news. That's more like the marketing slang here, not too much insight in my point of view. So I hope you guys are happy with that too. Gonna wrap it up from here. And thanks for tuning in. Once again, this was all live, unprepared. I didn't even know the numbers really beforehand. So this is always kind of a challenge, walking through that without knowing all of the details of such a big report. But you guys helped me with pointing out the right things, and I hope you value my opinion on that and have now maybe also a better view and something more to think about your personal investment in NIO. So yeah, thank you guys for watching, and see you in the next one.